Hey y'all. So let's get into the breakdown of John chapter 2. We're just in chapter 2 meaning. So the chapter context, chapter 2 begins to show Jesus' signs or miracles, which will prove that he is the Savior. The miracles will become more spectacular over time, but they start quietly. Contrast is an important part of the Gospel of John. The quiet, joyful miracle at the wedding is starkly different from the loud public spectacles of the cleaning of the temple. Jesus' first miracle symbolizes his mission. During the temple clearing, he also predicts his death and resurrection. This sets the stage for Jesus' private discussions with Nicodemus, a respected and influential man. So let's get into this breakdown. The part 1. John chapter 1 introduces Jesus as the Word in the light, truly and fully God. John 1:1-5. That passage also recorded conversations between John the Baptist and the religious skeptics. Near the end of the chapter, Jesus begins to call his earliest disciples. The second chapter of John covers 2 events. The first is the miracle of turning water into wine, and the second is Jesus driving the moneylenders out of the temple complex. Contrast is a common theme used in the Gospel of John. The 2 stories in this chapter are vastly different. One is joyful and quiet, the other is scolding and very public. The miracle at the wedding is the first of 7 signs that John uses to prove that Jesus is God. Wedding celebrations in that area were spread out over several days. Unlike today, when travel and communication are easy, it was difficult to predict when guests would show up. Traveling to the wedding site could take days. So, it was the host's responsibility to provide enough food and drink for all the guests who came. And what would have been a humiliating mistake. The wedding which Jesus attends has run out of wine. Jesus' mother, Mary, approaches him with this problem, but doesn't give Jesus any instructions. John 2:1-3. Jesus responds with a question, much like saying, "Why are you involving me in this?" Mary, for her part, simply tells the nearby servants to follow Jesus' instructions. When they do, 6 large stone jars of water have been transformed into wine, and not just any wine. The master of ceremonies indicate that it is better than what they have had before. Come on, Jesus. John 2:4-11. Turning the water into wine wasn't just a gift from Jesus to the married couple, it was to save them from extreme embarrassment. It was also done in quiet, almost secretive way. As far as we know, no one except for a few disciples, Jesus' mother Mary, and the servants knew it even happened. John's gospel is the only one which records this miracle. Changing water into wine is also a powerful symbol of Jesus' purposes. The 6 water jugs were used for purification from sin. 6 is a biblical number of man and of imperfection. Wine is a symbol of blood. The miracle's meaning was as much about Jesus replacing ritual purification with divine blood as anything else. His participation in a simple, joyful event also explains his compassion for people. This did not stop his enemies from criticizing him, however. Luke 15:1-2. John's gospel is meant to approach Jesus' ministry from a different perspective than the other 3 gospels. While Matthew, Mark, and Luke all mention Jesus cleaning the temple in his ministry, cleaning the temple late in his ministry, John places this event early. The most likely reason for this is that Jesus cleared the temple on 2 separate occasions. Yes, he did. This would have made the second event even much more offensive to the local religious leaders and accelerated their hatred for Jesus. Jesus' anger at the situation was not because money itself. Pilgrims could not easily travel with sacrificial animals, so it made sense to provide sacrifices for them to buy near the temple. What bothered Jesus was the way in which business was being done. Instead of providing a service to pilgrims, the merchants were gouging people to make a profit. The emphasis on making money instead of serving others was unacceptable. Jesus came in there flipping them tables like, I know y'all not. I know you're not. Though he is not described as being enraged or out of control, it's easy to see how forceful Jesus was in this situation. John 2:12-17. This is also one of Jesus' first opportunities to predict his own death and resurrection. Most of who heard him claimed to be able to rebuild the temple in 3 days assumed he was speaking of brick and stone temple. After his resurrection, the disciples would realize that Christ was speaking about his own body, destroyed and restored. Come on now, after 3 days. John 2:18-22. So let's get into this breakdown part 2. John chapter 2 is meaningful because it marks the beginning of Jesus' public ministry through 2 key events. His first miracle of turning water into wine at the wedding at Cana, and his forceful cleansing of the Jerusalem temple. These events demonstrate his divine power, authority, and mission. Cana highlights his glory in the new messianic age he brought, while the temple cleaning shows his zeal for God's house and his power over religious corruption. So let's break this down just a little bit more. It's 2 sections. First section is the wedding at Cana, John 2:1-12. Jesus' first miracle. He turns water into wine, demonstrating his divine glory and setting the stage for his public ministry. Symbolism. The water is used for Jewish purification rituals. The water used for Jewish purification ritual is transformed into wine, which is symbolic of his blood, representing the transition from ritual law to his new covenant. Okay. It took me a second to get that to work, to click in my head, but I got it. That's good. Abundance and joy. The large quantity of wine signifies the abundant joy and blessing that comes with the messianic age he ushered in. Cleansing the temple, John 2:13-22. Zeal for God's house. Jesus drives out merchants and money changers who had turned a place of worship into a marketplace, showing his anger at their actions. Authority and prophecy. One challenge, Jesus predicts his own death and resurrection by saying, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Symbolism. He identifies himself as the temple, and the resurrection is a sign of his authority, revealing that he is the presence of God on earth. Come on, Jesus. All right, y'all. So that is all I have for the breakdown of John chapter 2. I'll see you guys later. Bye.